Welcome to today's episode. Instead of going over a movie or a TV show, in this episode I'm going over the latest One Piece chapter. I'm not going over the TV series, not the live action yet. I think I'm fully caught up on where the Japanese anime is at. I don't think I'm fully caught up if there's been new releases recently of where the English anime is at. I have watched a live action, which I plan to do a video review on before the season 2 comes out. I know they're filming currently. I have read through the entire thing and I'm fully caught up. I had read through it again back when it was, I think, around 1,000 chapters. And I've watched through the Japanese anime, I think, twice back when it was much less episodes. But then I still managed to catch up from wherever I had left off to the current, wherever it is. I also watched the original English 4Kids dub, the till now I'm forgetting. I think it was up until Alabasta that they managed to go, and then I believe the series wasn't as popular as they were hoping for. So they had stopped creating dubbed episodes, and I'm remembering all of this from memory, if I'm correct about any of this. I believe they had stopped and then they had created a few more, or the next arc, I think they did. And then they released that one sometime later. And I don't think that one did well either. It was the Skypiea arc. And after that, as soon as Skypiea ends, I think that's when they had fully stopped creating episodes. And then the whole bankruptcy stuff happened, all of their legal issues. And then after all of that, they got out of the cartoon anime business altogether, if I remember correctly. And they are a completely different company, if they even still exist, whatever they might be. Anyway, that's a little bit of the history of that. But I had watched that through twice, the entire thing. And then when Funimation took over, I had watched through all of that twice, 3 times maybe, depending, at various stages. I had just gone back, rewatched it. So this is one of the series that I probably have seen, read the most out of literally anything else. And this is one of those series I have consistently kept up with. From the moment I first became aware of this series existing long, long ago to today. So I think it's a good series to do every so often, even though I don't think I'll be able to do it every single week when chapters release. I think I might just pick and choose which chapters I want to do something on and which chapters I don't. And that will kind of just be an in-between stuff to any other movies or TV shows I might want to do something on. So I'll be going back to like a TV show or a movie or something of like that next. But for now, I kind of want to tackle this series, especially now because not only is the live action really popular and has the next season in filming right now, but also because of where the series is in terms of the manga in the final leg of the journey, where I expect in another maybe 20 years or so, it'll probably end. And yes, I know a lot of people think within the next 5 years, but I honestly don't necessarily want it to be the next 5 years or within 5 years. I kind of want to see it continue and be paced out nicely and have a lot of detailed work in all of the characters, all of the side characters, and really explore the ending of this journey. So, starting off with the current chapter, chapter 1122, we have a cover page which is referencing My Hero Academia, and My Hero Academia has just ended. I want to do something on that because the series has just ended and give my thoughts on the entire thing, and especially the ending. But I'm not entirely sure if I necessarily want to tackle something like that, but we will see. This is a reference to back when the creator of My Hero Academia had drawn, back when he was 15, I believe, the image of Smoker, and he had submitted that, and now the creator of One Piece, Oda, has recreated that drawing as an official cover for this chapter, which I think is really nice, and it's a nice tribute to My Hero Academia ending. The first thing I should talk about is the reactions of the people that we continue to see throughout the announcement that Vegapunk has been making, throughout the broadcast. And the important thing to note in this one, and I think in all of them, is the reaction seems very genuine. In that, I mean that a lot of people seem to be on different sides of what they might be thinking towards the world government, towards pirates, and towards the way the world is heading. And I think that this chapter has like all the different reactions just like in one page. We have people being confused, we have people not wanting to believe that the world is sinking, we have people thinking that, well, what happens if pirates actually manage to get the One Piece? What happens if pirates happen to get the One Piece? The reaction from pirates versus the reaction from citizens, which I like. And it really seems like this message is reinvigorating yet again all of the pirates and all of the people who might want to set out to sea and try to find the One Piece. We know, from a reader point of view, that there is no way that anybody setting out now is going to get anywhere near finding the One Piece. Obviously, they don't necessarily believe that, but I think this is creating an interesting situation where the world government is now going to have to deal with yet another resurgence of pirates and people heading out to sea. And it's not just going to be pirates, but they're all going to be labeled pirates. It's going to be explorers, it's going to be adventurers, it's going to be treasure hunters, it's going to be all of those types of people. Anybody who's headed out to sea to do anything with regards to Vegapunk's message, whether that's trying to dive into the deep sea to find anything, whether that's trying to explore various islands to figure out the One Piece, figure out the history, anybody who is called to attention at this point to try to find the history, all of those people, I think, will be labeled as pirates, and the world government will have to probably go after all of them. I'm thinking that after Whitebeard's revelation that the One Piece exists yet again, since Roger did it the first time, and the Great Pirate Era began with him doing something like that, a second resurgence happens when Whitebeard does the exact same thing, and I think this time another situation like that is going to happen with Vegapunk's message, but not just pirates, whereas the other two invigorated people who wanted to be pirates and who wanted to go explore and treasure hunt, this will be those people as well as people who want to study the history, as well as people who are more historian leaning, and it will point them in directions to not necessarily head out to sea to do any plundering or to try to take on any other pirates, but likely they'll want to fly under the radar and try to gather pieces of information and history from all the various islands they could manage to get to. And I wouldn't be surprised if there all already are people like that in the One Piece universe that we just haven't seen yet, where they are going out and they are exploring and trying to piece together the history. I have a feeling that after Ohara was destroyed, not only in the Ohara incident were there, I believe, other survivors who just weren't on the island at the time, but I also believe that there were other people and other islands that had people who were historians, who just didn't live on Ohara, and who were trying to find out this history. And after they see Ohara being destroyed, they probably wouldn't have stopped, but they would have likely went more underground and tried to hide the fact that they exist. So I expect to see a lot more of those types of people going out into the world and trying to find something and working together with other people, maybe even with explorers and pirates and treasure hunters and all of those types, in order to figure out if what Vegapunk is saying is true and what the world government and the Navy and the Marines, depending on what you want to call them, are hiding from just the general population. And of course, there's just going to be a whole bunch of people who just don't care, and they just don't want their island to sink under the ocean. So there'll also be those people who will be panicked. We have something very important being shown, which is Kobe's reaction now to seeing or to hearing Vegapunk's message. I want to linger on this one just a little bit because I think what's going through Kobe's mind right now, which there's a lot to process, at least for him, being a Marine and being a Marine who wants to change the way Marines operate, and his dream of becoming an admiral in order to do all of that, changing things from the inside out. I believe what he's thinking right now is the pathway towards saving the world is getting a hold of the One Piece. And he's thinking in his mind that Luffy doesn't necessarily know what the One Piece is. Nobody really knows what the One Piece is. But Luffy won't be able to use it for what Kobe wants now to use it for. And that's why Kobe is saying here that he wants to stop Luffy from getting the One Piece. Because right now the One Piece is something so important that he needs the right person to get it. And he doesn't believe that Luffy is that right person. And I think he's thinking this because Luffy isn't in a position, being branded as a pirate and being branded as an Emperor of the Sea, even if he personally knows that Luffy is a good person and that Luffy might be the best person to actually go forward and get something like this. He doesn't believe that if Luffy got this, it will result in something good happening with the way the rest of the world views Luffy. Because remember, the rest of the world in universe views Luffy as a terrible pirate who's killing people, who's kidnapping people, who's destroying islands. You know, he's just the worst of the worst. And now that he's become Emperor level to the minds of everybody else, everybody believes him to be one of those terrible, terrible, most terrible people, just like all the other emperors. Obviously, that's not true, and Kobe knows that's not true. But if Luffy manages to become Pirate King, it'll just be a way for the world government to label him and anything he finds as evil and just sweep it away and either go after him and kill him. But if somebody like Kobe or the Marines manage to get something like this, they can use it for good. So I'm thinking that's why Kobe is saying what he's saying, not because he doesn't trust Luffy, not because he doesn't believe in Luffy, and not because he thinks Luffy is just a pirate and won't do anything good with it. It's because he needs the optics of the situation to work in the favor of the people of the world and of the Marines. So he's killing two birds with one stone here if he himself or somebody he trusts manages to get the One Piece instead of Luffy getting it. They can do a lot with this to change the world for the better. And I think that's where his mindset is at. And that's why he's saying what he's saying here. That's where his determination is. Now, I noticed a lot of people who are reacting to this are saying that this is the moment where Kobe's resolve will become stronger, and this will be the kick in the pants he needs to become strong enough, like Admiral level or something like that, in order to actually take on Luffy. Because right now it seems like the gap in their abilities is quite drastic. I think that not only the revelation of what the One Piece seems to be and what getting the One Piece seems to mean for the world will give him that resolve. I think he already had that resolve from what happened with Garp, and seeing Garp get pretty much taken in front of him without him actually being able to do anything. I think those two things will be the needed kick in the pants for him to become stronger. But I honestly don't see there being enough time for him to become that kind of strong. I think he kind of already is, but he might be the type of character where he doesn't realize his own strength, and until he has that motivation or that resolve or that will to actually properly fight and release that strength, I think that's the type of character that's being built here, where he technically already has that strength within him. He's just too shy or too, whatever it is, too reserved to showcase that. And I think this will be the kick in the pants for him to actually do that. And I do see this as mirroring a God Valley incident type thing, except not the same as God Valley, but something similar, where Kobe will want, after he's recovered, to go back and rescue Garp. Luffy, when he sees what happened to Garp, will want to go and rescue Garp. I don't believe that Luffy will go and rescue Garp. I believe that his extended fleet, or his grand fleet, will probably go, at least some of them, along with Law, because Law has people who have been kidnapped as well, to go rescue Garp and the rest of the people on Beehive. So I expect that to be the incident, but I don't expect for Luffy to end up there. And during that incident, I expect it to be a team up with Kobe and whoever else is there, and for them to end up rescuing whoever they rescue, and then come back to Elbaf to meet, or go to the Lodestar to meet Luffy. I want to say that Elbaf is not the next island. It would make a lot more sense if the next island is the island where Whitebeard and Ace are buried, because Luffy at some point needs to go to that grave, needs to see his brother's grave, and it would be the perfect way to tie in Weevil, and to tie in Stussy, and to tie in whatever happened to Ace's crew, and potentially to tie in whatever happened to that last poneglyph who's with the man marked by flames, who could very well be Ace's first mate, which I think is an amazing theory. And I really kind of want that to happen. So for the next island to be something like that, I think would make a lot of sense. And then for Luffy to set off to Elbaf. And at Elbaf, he'll meet Kid and Law and the Giants. And Luffy will have to stay on Elbaf for some time. Kid, Law, maybe some of his extended crew will go off to Beehive to rescue Garp, because Luffy will want to rescue Garp. And Law will want to rescue his crew. And somebody needs to rescue Pudding. And somebody needs to rescue whoever else is trapped there. I don't remember if Moria is trapped there or he managed to escape. He might have escaped, actually. But all the people who are trapped there that need rescuing, including Garp, would need to be rescued at some point. And I'm thinking that's happening in the next piece of One Piece, basically. I do expect for there to be a clash between Blackbeard and Kobe and the rest of them, but unlike what happened in the previous God Valley incident, where it looks like Rocks was taken out, I don't expect Blackbeard to be taken out by this one, because I don't expect Luffy to be there. I expect there to be a clash with the Marines again, rescuing Garp, or at least the Marines of Sword rescuing Garp, and then the rest of Luffy's extended crew and his allies and stuff like that, rescuing some of the other pirates that are there, and then all of them regrouping in Elbaf and coming up with a plan for what to do next. And that's when Kobe and Garp meet back up with Luffy, and then they discuss what the next steps are to come. And I don't expect it to be Luffy's decision or anything like that. It'll be probably Nami, it'll be Robin, it'll be somewhat of Usopp, and pretty much all the rest of the crew, other than Zoro and Luffy, I think, will be the only ones out of the discussion. But the rest of the crew, and extended crew, and everybody else who gathers on Elbaf will need to now plan what the next steps are. Luffy still needs rubbings of all the other poneglyphs that are scattered all over the world. He still needs to go back and get them, or he needs somebody to go and get them. Either his extended crew are already doing that, or at that point in Elbaf, he will have them all go out and gather everything needed. Then Luffy will spend some time on Elbaf exploring the legends and the lore and all of that. I don't expect it to be an island where there's much fighting, but if Big Mom and Kaido had survived the encounter that they had before on Wano, I expect it to be Big Mom coming to take revenge and her arc ending in Elbaf, the place where she had always wanted to go back to and get a giant as part of her crew. I have a feeling that that will be the final end of whatever happens with Big Mom and Kaido, and I expect them to be defeated yet again in Elbaf, and I expect them to end up not being killed, but just retiring basically as pirates, having grave enough injuries so that they can't be pirates anymore, they can't fight anymore. And it would be the perfect place to have Pudding returned, and to have Big Mom and Kaido just finally leave. Kaido will likely just go off with Big Mom and live on her Cake Island. And then the rest of Kaido's crew that weren't captured, I assume none of them were captured. I don't think they were captured. But if they were captured, then maybe Kaido can go off on a cover story adventure to go rescue them. I also expect for them to take quite some time in Elbaf, because I think Elbaf will be the place to get a whole lot more information about the history of the world, the history from Saul, from all of the books. Robin will likely want to read all of that if she doesn't already memorize all of them as a kid. She'll want to catch up with Saul. There is a lot of people in the community who are speculating that one of the great trees might exist in Elbaf, and it would make sense with the Yggdrasil tree, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it would make sense with either if the tree Eve or the tree Adam or something like that exist within Elbaf, for it to extend all the way up to a sky island, maybe even containing a sky island within it, an important one, potentially the crew scaling that tree, going up to a sky island at that point. We still have one of the worst generation who is a sky island person, I think like a Birkin or something like that. I can't remember his exact what he's supposed to be, but we still need that character to tie in. We still need Enel to come back. This is the perfect place for all of that to just happen. And then for everybody to set out a goal for the next leg of the journey. Because after this, Luffy and crew need to get to, and I have a feeling the next island after Elbaf will be Lodestar. There won't be any islands in between. Unless the island where Ace is buried is in between, in which case that'll happen in between that. Either Luffy and his crew go to the island where Ace is buried first, or they go there after Elbaf. One or the other, it doesn't matter which one comes first. Actually, rethinking it, if Garp and Luffy go to that island together, I think that would be even better. And Sabo would go. It would be the perfect opportunity for Sabo to go. So let me rephrase everything that I've been thinking, or re-put it together. Luffy and the rest of the crew, after Egghead, head off to Elbaf. In Elbaf, they meet up with Law, after Beppo has gotten him there, and they meet up with whatever remains of Kid. I assume Kid is still alive. Maybe he's missing a leg now, maybe he's missing another arm, whatever he's missing. He's alive, he's still there. All his fleet have been sunk, I guess. His boat's gone. He's probably heavily damaged. His crew, if any of them survived, are probably heavily damaged. And they're just on Elbaf, but not really on Elbaf. Maybe they're like secluded to the beach area, and they're just licking their wounds. Law returns. Law fixes him up as best he can. Luffy ends up showing up. Luffy's extended crew show up. When Luffy's heart stopped, I would imagine that his card would start to burn like Ace's did, and either completely vanish, or I don't think it would completely vanish, but I think it would just start burning rapidly, and then his heart starts back and the card just stops burning. And at that point, his entire extended fleet are alarmed, and they would like head out to go to where Luffy is in case he needs help. And I expect them all, or at least most of them, to show up. And at that point, Luffy would get news of what happened to Garp and what happened to basically everybody else in the world. We'll get new bounty posters at that time. We'll get to see the reactions. We'll get to see the entire conversation. Well, we won't get to see, but the crew will get to see the entire conversation if any of them hadn't heard it while battling on Egghead. And we'll also get to see the reactions of his extended crew and what they think of everything that has happened. And we'll get to see Law's reaction and Kid's reaction, and the Giants. We'll get to see all of them. And we'll have the time in Elbaf to explore the history of Elbaf. We'll have the time to explore the history that Elbaf managed to save from Ohara. We'll have time for Saul. We'll have time for like everything. We'll have Luffy's extended crew go over to Beehive to rescue everybody. They'll come back to Elbaf. They'll plan their next moves. That will give time for Sabo to show up and for Vivi to show up. And everybody will just come together and be like, okay, what do we do now? And we'll even have Dragon there, throw him in too. So, in all likelihood, how I see this playing out, Luffy, Sabo, and Garp will go to Sphinx Island, I believe that's what it's called, to see the grave. I believe that they'll also part ways at that point, in order for Sabo to continue with the revolutionaries and carry out everything that Dragon has planned, likely teaming up with some of the pirates in order to help them do this. They'll have the opportunity to fix Vegapunk's main body, because I don't think he's dead. His heart may have stopped, but I don't think he's dead. And I think they'll be able to fix that. If anybody, Law will be there. He'll be able to fix it. You have one of the Vegapunks who are still survived. They might be able to fix it. You have Frankie, who was hit by a train as a child, lost most of his body, and he managed to fall on a scrap island and fix himself. How is that even possible? We still don't know how that's possible. If anything, we have a bunch of people who could just fix him. So I expect that to happen. I expect the main body to still be alive and fixable. And I expect the last remaining non-main body, the satellite Vegapunk, Lilith, to still be fine. Just not connected to the main brain. And if anybody, the main Vegapunk would probably have a way to connect to his own brain, where the others that might be connected, York might be the only one left, won't be able to tell what's happening, and that he is actually connected, because it's his brain. It's not like he's a satellite that needs to connect and upload or whatever. It's his. So I have a feeling that unless he has made himself into a satellite, it is just his brain. He should just have that knowledge. But we still don't know exactly how that works, so we will see. I believe the next steps for them is after they're finished on Elbaf and dealing with Sky Island, and Enel can show up too. All of them can show up, all the main characters. And Shiki shows up too, don't worry about that. All of them, we've accounted for everybody, I think. Like, everybody shows up here. We have Blackbeard setting out on his plan, which in all likelihood Law will figure out what his next plan will be, and it will likely be going after the ancient weapons, because on the rescue mission, Law figures out that Caribou might have told him, or saw that Caribou told him. He'll come back with that information, being like, okay, here's the situation. Blackbeard's next move, he's already headed out. He's going to Wano to collect an ancient weapon. He knows where that is. He knows all about that. We need to do something about that. At that moment, likely Law and a few other people will head to that location. He'll also be like, okay, they're going to Fishman Island after that, because they're going to be kidnapping, the mermaid princess. So then some of Luffy's extended crew will probably go defend that location. I have a feeling the Giants will also accompany them. And Luffy's goal will be then to go off, likely to Sphinx Island, and then we'll be able to deal with Marco and the rest of the Whitebeard crew. We'll be able to deal with Weevil. We'll be able to deal with Stussy. And that situation will likely resolve without Luffy staying there. After that island, he'll head out to the last place that all the compass needles point to, Lodestar. I don't think he'll end up encountering the man marked by flames yet. He'll make it to Lodestar first, before heading off to finding the man marked by flames. Simultaneously, the remainder of the rest of his extended crew, and other allies that he might have, will go try to find the rest of the poneglyph rubbings. Whether they just find rubbings that exist in the world, or they try to find the actual poneglyphs and make rubbings themselves. One or the other. And then there'll be a moment again where they'll have to reconvene with all of that information. I believe at Lodestar, we'll have Luffy, Buggy, and Shanks all meeting at the same time. And at that point, we'll have Luffy challenging Shanks, and then Shanks turning it into a Davy back fight. And then Buggy will just be there. Maybe it's a three-way Davy back fight. All three of them will get Crocodile's backstory, and whatever the mystery behind him is, he's not Luffy's mother. We'll get some of Buggy and Shanks' backstory. And maybe Shanks may know more about his own backstory than we know. Maybe Shanks may know more about Buggy's original backstory than we may know. I believe they're about the same age. They're both found as infants. We can basically confirm that Shanks was found in a treasure chest, and he is the son of one of the Celestials that exist currently. So I believe we'll get all of that information at that point. We'll have Luffy wanting to give back the hat. we'll have a proper 1v1, but not like a real full-on battle, but more like a kind of test battle between the two of them to see if Luffy and his crew are actually ready to take the final steps to become Pirate King at that island. And we'll have all the 1v1s that we need. We'll have Yasop and Usopp, we'll have Luffy and Shanks, and then we'll have whatever swordsman on Shanks' crew. Actually, we could just have Mihawk and Zoro at that point clashing, which I think would be really cool. Whether or not Zoro is strong enough yet at this point to properly take him on, I don't know, but I have a feeling this is the moment where we'll have Zoro be dubbed as almost equals to him. I don't think he'll be able to take him on or defeat him, but I think he'll be strong enough at that point where they're very close to being equals. And then after this, I think they'll have their proper battle somewhere down the line before the full series ends. But at this point, I expect for Shanks and Buggy to give their blessing to Luffy and basically travel with him to the end. And I see Shanks, Buggy, and Luffy all going to the end together. And then I know a lot of people have been predicting that Blackbeard will either kill or clash with Shanks at some point. I kind of don't see that happening anymore. I have thought that that would be a good way of doing things. I don't know anymore if that's necessarily a good way of doing things because of how important Shanks actually is and how much information and knowledge he might have that we still need to see. And I think the only way that it makes sense for the Shanks-Blackbeard fight and for Shanks to either kill or for Shanks to be killed by Blackbeard would only make sense if Luffy doesn't get to meet him yet or return the hat before he gets killed. And I don't see him getting killed anymore because he's far too important and he's far too connected, and then that'll break the whole Buggy situation. And because I expect him to end up teaming up with Buggy to get to the end. And I don't see Shanks being removed like that from the story, especially since he's too important. So I kind of expect that clash just not to happen. At least yet. Maybe after they make it to the end, the clash will happen, but not yet. Now, I don't know if Luffy necessarily needs to be crowned Pirate King in order for his dream to come true, but it does seem like he believes he does. I have a feeling once they get to the end, a situation where Luffy was still too early will occur, similar to how Roger was too early, and Luffy will realize that he needs the ancient weapons in order to properly fulfill whatever Joy Boy wants to be fulfilled, and to get whatever Joy Boy had left. And let me take an aside slightly right now, and say that the One Piece is whatever Roger left. The treasure that Joy Boy left is not the One Piece, is something else, and I don't even think Roger had a name for it when he was seeking out whatever final island was calling to him. But it's just been bundled as the One Piece. And I almost feel like those two things should be separate and talked about separately, instead of everybody just calling it the One Piece. It's almost like it should be considered the One Piece that Roger left and the One Piece that Joy Boy left. And I think those two things are two different things, and I think whatever Roger may have left will help whoever ends up finding it. And whatever Joy Boy had left will help whoever found it or finds it to fulfill whatever Joy Boy wasn't able to fulfill. And that's how I think it should be framed. And I don't know if Roger ends up leaving an egg there, if he left like literal gold in his actual treasure, or he left his sword, whatever he might have left. He clearly left something. And there is something else as well. And I have a feeling that when Luffy gets there, he'll see the same message that Joy Boy left, and whatever made Roger laugh. He'll also find Roger's treasure that Roger left there. But he won't be able to access whatever Joy Boy originally left there. And he'll realize that he needs all the ancient weapons and maybe other things in order to actually get that. So then the plan will be They'll leave, and Buggy will take Pirate King as title. Buggy will be the pseudo-Pirate King. Luffy will not be. Luffy will then have to go and gather all the things that he needs, and then return to the end, fulfilling whatever Joy Boy wants. And then he'll leave, he'll be dubbed Pirate King after that, and then he'll go off and change the world and make his actual dream come true. Along with the final battles that should have already started. I think that'll end the final battles with the world government, with the pirates, with Blackbeard, with all the moving pieces. And the revolutionaries. All of them will probably have already been at war at that point. Likely when Luffy, Shanks, and Buggy enter the part of the sea where if any of them come out, they're dubbed Pirate King. At that point, I think war will have just started, or started like just before then, or just after that point. And then they'll come out and see the world at war. And then they'll have to navigate that type of world in order to get the final pieces to fulfill Joy Boy's request. Then they'll have to fulfill that while war is going on. And during that time, the war will end. And Luffy will then finally be able to do his dream, whatever that might be. That's kind of how I see it playing out. Anyways, so back to the current chapter. We have Blackbeard reacting to Caribou wanting to meet with him, and basically being like, okay, I'll hear him out. Which is reasonable. We know that Blackbeard is reasonable. We also know that Caribou has information that Caribou shouldn't have. And we know that this will set in motion a whole bunch of things that Blackbeard will likely go out and do. And we know that Luffy will need to then react to that, or at least his extended crew will need to be in place in order to stop this. Because I don't see Blackbeard getting his hands on 2 ancient weapons. I don't even see him getting his hands on 1 ancient weapon. If anything, technically, Blackbeard could get his hands on Pluton, and then Frankie will be like, oh, I memorized the blueprints to the countermeasure, and I can deal with it. Or, I've already built it, we're standing upon it. This is the countermeasure. And I kind of see it going either way. Either Blackbeard not getting his hands on any ancient weapons, or him getting his hands on Pluton. And then they have the countermeasure. Frankie has a countermeasure. So that's kind of how I see that, but this situation is terrible. The Blackbeard situation. Moving on from that, we have Buggy's speech, which is absolutely brilliant. Like, I have a feeling to get to the One Piece, Buggy will have to go through literal hell, and he has already gathered a crew, a following, a cult that will follow him to the depths of hell itself. So I think he is in the best position possible to do whatever it takes to actually get the One Piece, even if along the way he's given up and he doesn't want it anymore. I do want to see him find the Captain John treasure, if he hasn't already found that. The next most important thing, I think, is the Iron Giant, Emmett, basically saying that he's sorry for not being able to make Joy Boy king. And a lot of people I've seen react to this and are questioning, what does king mean in this context? If Joy Boy is the first pirate, likely, I believe Joy Boy was an adventurer who just wanted to go out and see the world. And the world government, before they were actually world government, all these various nations that were likely already allied in some way with one another, viewed that as sacrilege and viewed that as something that he shouldn't be allowed to do, and labeled him as a pirate at that point. And I think he was just an explorer who was spreading information about how they did things back in the Ancient Kingdom. How they were super free, and how they had all this technology, and it's super cool. And, you know, they didn't have kings there, they had like a voting system, and somebody is elected, and I have a feeling it's going to be all that. And him spreading that information would then make them be like, he's spreading information that undermines our authority as kings, and to keep all the people in line, we need to silence him, we need to make him the enemy. let's label him this thing that we call a pirate, and pirates are evil and all they do is plunder and steal and kill people, etc. So I think that that might end up being the origin of how he gets labeled a pirate and why pirates are evil, and he was actually just an explorer. I also have a feeling that he's not trying to become king, or he wasn't trying to become king of any particular nation, because I just don't see that being in line with the freedom thing, which a lot of people point out. If Joy Boy's whole goal is to be the freest, or to just be free, I almost don't see him wanting to take on a position of king. It might be that Emmett wanted Joy Boy to become king of a certain place, or a particular kingdom, or a particular island or something like that. And this was Emmett's goal for Joy Boy, not necessarily Joy Boy's own dream, and not necessarily something that Joy Boy necessarily wanted. So it could be that perspective where Emmett is talking that Emmett wants Joy Boy to become king and wanted to make Joy Boy king. And he's sorry that he wasn't able to make that happen. Not necessarily Joy Boy wanted to become king of somewhere. But in the end, I don't actually know which makes more sense and which might be more correct. But it is important to point that out. And this display of hockey that we got to see is probably the strongest display of hockey we have ever seen. I know a lot of people are saying that this might be the pinnacle, this might be the absolute top, the strongest hockey ever. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I want to say that maybe there are other characters with this kind of level of hockey. Maybe the Elders in their prime would have had something like this during their wartime prime form. Maybe. Or maybe they were weaker than this. But I want to say that there would have had to been characters back in the past and in the current time that have hockey of this scale. I want to say that Roger probably had something of this scale. I want to say that Whitebeard in his prime had something of this scale. I want to say that Shanks currently may have something of this scale, because we've never really seen Shanks, like, properly fight. So I expect to see that pirates of this era, especially somebody like Shanks, maybe not just pirates, but maybe also somebody like Kobe in the future, or in the near future, somebody like Garp in his prime, somebody like Dragon currently, or maybe in his prime. I don't think he's that old though. And somebody like Sabo would have hockey of this scale, because you know they'd need to fight the world government directly. You know they'd need something like this to be able to fight the world government. All of these people. So I do expect them all to have something like this. The next important thing I think to discuss would be the way that the hockey interferes with or attacks the 5 elders. Well, 4 elders here, because one of them is sitting patiently and a little bit grumpily back in the office that they have, the lounge. I don't know where that is. What's important to note here is that when this hockey is released, it seems as though it's wiping away, or almost like it's almost like a light turns on and the shadows get dispelled by this hockey, and you get to see their original forms underneath it all. And then at that moment, they're reverse summoned back to where they once were, or the summoning is undone. And again, this summoning thing is just weird. Just really, really weird. The only time we've ever seen anything even close to this within One Piece is when a whole bunch of people tried to summon a literal demon to slay their enemies or something like that, and then Brook shows up. Which makes me wonder if there are just things like this in the world, where people know of, like, demon circles and trying to summon demons. That's just a thing that exists. And maybe it's been inspired by actual demons, or by beings like the 5 elders that had once existed, and their legends have been written about in kind of like fairy tale like books that people have, or maybe even in like religious like scriptures, and that's what they're trying to mimic. But either way, beyond all of that, the important thing here is that the Haki being released is just wiping away this form that they have, reverting them back to their full human form, and then the summoning is undone. I want to say that the summoning is Saturn himself and his power doing that, if it's a devil fruit, is part of his devil fruit abilities. Since we don't yet have confirmation that any one individual of them can summon one another, it does look like they're somewhat tired, but I don't know if that's because of them fighting for so long or maintaining that form that's burning through energy, and that's why they look tired, or because the Haki really affected them, and that's what made them tired. I am wondering if they're still strong enough, or is Saturn still strong enough to just summon them again. It does call into question why Saturn summoned himself onto the island, and how he managed to do that when he was just on the boat right nearby. It almost seems like in order to draw out this kind of power, they have to do that, and they're just creating like either a false body or a shadow body where their actual body isn't there, but it does look like their real body is actually there. Unless it's a mistake and Saturn should still be on the boat, it does look like Saturn's actual body is still standing right there. So I think that he does end up summoning himself or his body onto that island in a different way than he summoned the rest of them onto that island. If what happened to the rest of them happened to him, he should be back on his boat where he originally was to summon himself. Unless he did hop himself onto the island and the summoning stuff was just a show while he just physically walked onto the island and he was just always there. And he created that illusion of himself that was fighting everybody, and he was just standing nearby. But we still don't know enough about how their powers work, if they're even devil fruits or if they're not devil fruits, but we'll probably get a lot more information about them sometime later. The next important thing to talk about is Imu's reaction to that Haki. It's not clear if it was felt from Egghead all the way to here, or if because these beings, the five elders, might be extensions of Im, or might be connected to this being in some way, that he's feeling it through them and not feeling it directly. I want to almost say that Imu might be a character where they're similar to Kobe and to Enel and the other Skypian child, where they have a version of observation Haki that is just mind-blowing in the area that they're able to observe and feel, where Enel is just able to situate himself somewhere and he's able to feel the entire country and all the people. I have a feeling that Im is somewhat similar, and that observation Haki allowed them to feel that Haki from very far away. But I don't think it's like, oh, I have the ability to observe the whole planet or something like that. It's probably just a mind-blowingly big field that they're able to observe over. And because Im knows that all of the five elders had summoned themselves to that island, they're likely stretching their ability to just see that island and keep an eye over it. Not necessarily like a giant dome encompassing that island, as well as everything else in the dome, radius centering at Im, but maybe stretching it into a different shape so it's like funneled or focused right towards Egghead, not really needing to focus anywhere else. It could be something like that. Almost like how Usopp used his Haki to sniper focus in on one particular area. It could be like that. And Imu was just looking over Egghead Island and focusing on that one island to watch everything that was going on. But the reaction is almost as though the wind was knocked out of him, and he's like, he can't believe what he just witnessed or seen or felt. Whether that's, oh no, Joy Boy is back, or oh no, I didn't think that hockey still existed in this world, or fearful, or I'm angry. It's hard to tell, but it does look like it's like this knocked the wind out of him. I think the final thing to talk about, well, one of the final things to talk about in this chapter, would be seeing Joy Boy's silhouette now shows that Joy Boy is likely a normal-sized human, or human-like being, and not a giant, and not any other race. A lot of people had wanted to believe when we found out that Kuma was a buccaneer, that Joy Boy would also be a buccaneer. It doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like Joy Boy is just a regular human. It really looks like Joy Boy is wearing a straw hat. It looks too much like a straw hat. I just want to believe that a straw hat has been passed down from Joy Boy's time all the way to Luffy, and it's just exchanged hands over and over again. Not necessarily through a bloodline, but through random people. Passing this hat down for whatever reason, whatever will had possessed them to do so. They had just found somebody that kind of reminded them of either themselves or somebody else, and they're like, here, have this hat. And it just kept happening over and over again. I would like to see, however, the passage of the hat, and who gave it to Roger, and who all of these people were. If they were important, if they were just not important people at all, if any of them were explorers or pirates, if some of them might not have been pirates, it would be cool to just see the passage. Joy Boy standing on a cube, that is very obvious by the shape. It is almost guaranteed to be a poneglyph. I can't see it being anything else. I know some people have speculated that what if poneglyphs are so strong because they're imbued with hockey, just like the black swords, and maybe the red ones are a special different type of hockey. I almost see that as being the case, but if that is the case, then I'm surprised that nobody had a strong enough will from the time that these were created to now to damage or destroy one. It could be that the will of whoever created them is just that strong. I'd like to say that in this scene, it's probably either the war that Joy Boy was a part of has ended, and they've already lost, or it's nearing its end, or Joy Boy already knows that it's not going to go his way. But I have a feeling this is so far enough along that Joy Boy's already put in place everything he needs, such that this war is going to be lost by him, and he has set up everything he needs for whoever comes next to pick up from where he left off. Because if this is a poneglyph, then he's already created all of the poneglyphs in all likelihood at this time. He's already prepared and planning for what's to come next. And this might be one of the final steps that he's taking, ensuring that Emmett has what he needs to defend himself or defend somebody in the future. I'm thinking that at this point, this poneglyph that we see here is likely just set where it's supposed to be, wherever this might be. I don't know if it's possible to tell. It does look like the ocean in the background. It is on land, and you see birds and some sky, so it just looks like some random island. It could be the final island, and this is the final message that Joy Boy was leaving. But if that's the case, I think that the conversation between the two would be a little bit different here. Though maybe not. Maybe this is actually the final one. He's just come here with Emmett to put this final one in place, and then he's going to go off and do something else. I have a feeling that the story of the poneglyphs is something along the lines of, at some point Joy Boy knows that he's going to lose. He's putting these poneglyphs in place in various places in order to ensure that the history is kept and that somebody will have something to guide them to where they need to go. And the fact that the red ones point to the final place, being Laugh Tale, is important, obviously. And the fact that it's pointing to that place likely means that Joy Boy has a favorable connection to that place, since I have heard ideas that maybe Joy Boy was an enemy to that place. I don't think so, because he is pointing people to there where he left his final message. Unless all of this means that Laugh Tale is not the name or the location of the Great Kingdom, and those two places are two different places, which could be possible. What's important here is that the story of the poneglyphs is likely Joy Boy has created them when he knew he was about to lose, or when he believed he was going to lose, and he put them all in place with various people in various kingdoms that he trusted and he knew would keep them safe. Then, once the world government won the war against him, they went around and likely collected these poneglyphs from the places they could have collected them from. I don't believe that Emu had all of them. In all likelihood, he had a whole bunch of them that he had managed to get from various islands, and not necessarily had the ones that were kept on Zhao, and kept in Fishman Island, and kept in some of the other places which were likely impossible to reach. And those were the poneglyphs Vivi's ancestor would have likely rescued and given back to, or sent to, various islands to have them hidden. I don't know if she would have put them back to the original islands that they came from, or she would have just hid them somewhere else. In all likelihood, she just hid them somewhere else. And that's why we see various regular poneglyphs in places that it doesn't seem like they necessarily belong. And that might be a way of answering the question of how some emperors just have random other poneglyphs without it being they went to an island that was defending this thing and they just stole it from that island. It could have just been all of the ones that Emu collected when Vivi's ancestor had stolen them all, or let them all slip away. They slipped away to places where nobody was there to necessarily defend them, but nobody knew where those ended up. And Im couldn't go back to the original places he got them because they aren't there anymore. They weren't returned to those places. I think that would be a good way of dealing with that situation. The other important thing is Emmett's eyes going out in the final panel. I want to say that Emmett is not dead. I want this character to survive and to be rescued and brought to Elbaf. I have a feeling it just powered down after everything that happened, and it'll take some time for it to recharge. The perfect group of people and the perfect location to go to. The Straw Hat crew has at least one Vegapunk in their possession that's not dead, and I believe that Elbaf is likely heavily defended, and the world government will likely not try to attack them. So that might be the best place to fix up Emmett, fix up the original Vegapunk's body, and get some information at least. It is possible that Emmett will be like, well, I could tell you, but it's better if you went on this journey and found it because that's what he wanted. That's what Joy Boy wanted. So I'll expect it to be something very similar to what Rayleigh had said. That, continue on your journey. I'll wait here until the time that I'm needed again. One other thing that I'll mention is that the straw hat that we see in the freezer area that Emu went to, I don't think that belonged to Joy Boy. A lot of people believe that was Joy Boy's hat. It looked so big. Im either might be really small or might be normal sized, whatever, and the hat is just gigantic. Meaning that either Joy Boy is like a giant or almost a giant, bigger than a normal human, just for the size comparison to work out. It's hard to know when a size comparison should be trusted in One Piece. So I don't know if we could necessarily trust the size comparison of Emu and the hat. And I don't know if we could necessarily trust the size comparison of Emu and the chair. And we don't really see him next to the five elders. And I don't know how well we could trust their sizes compared to any other people in general. So that's a bit off until we get proper confirmation on any of these sizes. But I do think that Joy Boy is just normal human sized, and the hat likely belonged to either Emmett. Now the final thing that I should be mentioning and theorizing on is the knot that Joy Boy left. Up to this point, we've only ever seen on the Weather Island that somehow you could take this string rope knot thing and have different levels of wind gust within each. And Nami has that technology now. I don't think we've ever seen that anywhere else in the entire series. And it is kind of something that everybody just accepted, glossed over, and it's like, okay, I guess that's just how that works. They have this fancy technology. I'm assuming that because technology like that exists, there are also people, back in the past at least, who knew how to take other things and imbue them into knots. And then when the knot is released, whatever that is also released. It would be interesting if not just wind can be put into there, but anything. In all likelihood, that's exactly what Joy Boy was using, that type of technology. And instead of just wind, he put his own Conqueror's Haki within it. It almost seems like, I don't know, it took time to do something like that. He had to like really focus, and can you do other things like fire or water? We do have the dials from Skypiea as well, that somehow these living creatures, after they die and the shells are left, you're able to put in like various things into these dials and store them and keep using them over and over again, like the fire dials or the water, I think there was water, the air ones, etc. I don't remember if you'd need to keep refilling the dial with whatever it needs, or it just has a copy of it and it just keeps creating more and more copies. Either way, it almost seems broken, but because the rope technology exists with these knots, and the dial technology exists, which might be slightly different and more naturally forming in this world, I would assume both can kind of do the same thing if you find the right snail. Like, I think you'd need the right snail to have fire put into the dial, or maybe you'd need the right craftsman to craft a base one into something that will hold either fire or water or something else, depending on what you want it to hold. You'll have to craft it correctly. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and recheck the chapter to see if there's any explanation on any of that stuff. But I'm assuming the knot technology is somewhat similar, where if you have the know-how, you can imbue something else into the knot. On Weatheria, it was different types of weather things. I'm guessing Joy Boy was like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder if I could put Haki into this and see what happens. And he probably tried it and it worked. And then he's like, I wonder if I could put Conqueror's Haki into this. And then he tried it and it worked. And then he's like, okay, this could be an interesting tool. Clearly the rest of the world doesn't have anything like this technology. If they did, the Marines would be using it. If they did, everybody would be using it. I'm guessing that it's very specific to Weatheria and only the people of the sky had something like this. It does seem in this series that the sky is very, very separated from the rest of the world, and the deep ocean is very, very separated from the rest of the world. Everything that happens below the sea and everything that happens above in the sky are very isolated and don't influence one another too much, if at all. So in that case, you have ancient technology that had once existed and is just commonplace up in the sky, and the sky people are using it. They've always had it. They've never had a situation where their world sunk and they lost the technology. And I'm thinking that's similar to the people of the deep ocean. There's only one group of people. I wouldn't be surprised if there's other locations where merfolk may exist under the sea, but they wouldn't have the Eve tree giving them light. So maybe they might need to be closer to the surface, but then again, the sea beasts don't seem to need that, and they somehow are able to survive, so maybe there are other types of beings like that, or fish beings that can survive too. It would be a good place, the Calm Belt at least, if the giant sea beasts don't kill you, to live there, or any merfolk. Maybe ones that are more in harmony with the sea beasts. But it does seem like you need the power of the ancient weapon in order to control them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need the power of an ancient weapon to be able to befriend them, or to live in harmony with them. So, it would be cool if we got more deep-sea adventures. I don't know if that'll happen. It would be cool if we got more Sky Island adventures. Other than in Elbaf, where I expect them to have a giant tree going all the way up to the sky, and for them to scale that tree and see yet another sky island, I don't expect us to see any other sky islands. Unless the final island is a sky island, or unless the final island is in the deep sea. Then we'll get some more deep sea adventure there, or we'll get some more sky island there. Unless it's on the moon, then we'll get moon adventures, but Enel already went to the moon. One big question, did Roger ever go to the moon? That would be interesting to know. Enel will have to come back with that information. Will Luffy have to go to the moon? Probably not. Enel will bring back whatever Luffy needs, so we won't be going to the moon. I kind of want to go to the moon. I want to see all the other planets. Is there one moon, or is there multiple moons for this Earth planet that we're on? It would be cool to explore all of that. It would be cool to see all of that. I don't know if all of that will be explored or seen in this series. I can wish for it. I don't know if it'll happen. And I think I'll end this here, because I've talked on quite a while, much longer than I expected to, but that's fine. So, I don't think I'll be doing an episode on each chapter. That likely won't happen. If any particular chapter has something interesting that I kind of want to talk about, then I'll do one. Other than that, I'll probably stick to movies and TV shows mainly, and a few other mangas and animes that I want to do. Actually, a lot of animes that I want to do. A few mangas that I also want to do. I'll see you guys in the next episode.